Hi everyone, I'm Dawn McCaw. Thank you for joining Arts Chat. Today we are going to have a special guest on, and I will introduce her in just a moment. But again, I'm Dawn McCaw. You're joining us live or later for another episode of Arts Chat. And here I see our guest. I'm just going to wave to a few people. Thanks for joining us on Arts Chat. And excited today to have Shana Circe as my guest. She will be on in just a minute. Okay, and I see a few more people joined. So, hi everyone, and thanks for joining our Friday Arts Chat. And hi Shana, thanks for joining.
Hi, Dawn. Thanks for having me. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Let's turn my volume up a little bit. Okay. So yes, thanks for joining. And
No
I wanted
problem.
I wanted to give you a brief introduction. So Shana graduated actually in 2002 with a BS in visual arts, and then went on and earned her MSED, her Master's of Science in Education in Visual Arts Education, and in '08. And I've known Shana for quite a long time, and I think her story is so interesting, and she'll share it. But yeah, thank you so much. She is currently an artist showing work in local galleries, and she's also an art educator teaching classes at Cornell Creative Arts Center. She's also the owner and principal instructor of Umbrella Arts Academy, an online art classroom. And I've seen Shana's work in so many different ways, so many different mediums, and so I'm super glad to have you on. So did you want
Thank
to just
you.
share? You have so much to share. Your current
Sure.
position, your work here at New Paltz, and then like your art venture, which is taken off in such a great way. I just see somebody saying Shana is amazing. So yes, I agree. I
I
it over
see.
to
Hi,
you.
Ashley. She's a former student staff member of mine, an amazing young woman herself. So, hi, Ashley. You are also amazing. So, yeah, do you want me to just kind of jump in
Yeah,
and
you can jump
give
in.
my story in terms of how I became all of the wonderful things you just said in terms of where I am now in my arts career was a very long and winding road because when I went to school and first started to visualize myself as an artist, so I graduated from New Paltz in 2002, and I actually got my BS in visual arts education as well, with a concentration in photography. So I went through my undergraduate career in visual arts education with the intention of going into the art classroom, and then started pretty much right away on my master's degree here. At the time, there were very specific rules around how long you had to complete the master's degree program in education in order to keep your certification. And at that time, I had a wonderful opportunity to work for SUNY New Paltz in the admissions office. So I found myself working full time in higher education while I continued my studies in art education at the master's level. And what I discovered along the way was I really had a love and passion for higher education. And I wasn't ready to move on from that right away. And I think the theme was for me, I loved art and I loved higher ed, but the concurrent theme was the education piece, and I wanted to teach other artists, and that's what I went to school for. But I found myself in higher education, which allowed me a lot of opportunities to teach as well, just in a different way outside of a classroom. I worked with a very large student staff. Student ambassadors, welcome center staff members, and I had a lot of opportunity also in my role to express myself through my work in the arts, because it was a very, working in higher education, if you have a skill, most often you can find an outlet for that skill because there are just a lot of opportunities for here. So I still had a lot of opportunities to express that creative side of myself, creating visual materials for the work that I was doing on a day-to-day basis. And I guess the lesson for me, in hindsight, now that I'm much further down the road in life, and I had an 18-year career in higher education, was that what you go, if you want to be in the arts and be an artist, you don't only have to be in the arts and be an artist in your life, to be able to feel like you are using those skills. So spent a long career in higher education, loved it, and then got to a point where I was really ready to immerse myself in the arts culture, and wanted to do that as my full-time job. Took some time to kind of set myself up, spoke with my staff and my supervisors at the time to say, this is my goal. I gave them a year's notice. That's not normal. So you don't have to do that if you're thinking about a career switch. But that was what was right for me at the time. And I was very intentional about where I wanted to be, and where I wanted to focus my energy for the next 20 years of my life. And that was in an arts career. So I spent that year kind of setting myself up and figuring out how to make that transition. And now I find myself here today. It's an interesting, I spent a year, I left my higher ed job. I spent a year building my portfolio, presented work to a few galleries, and that they accepted it. And I got to hang my work in a couple of shows, and then really started focusing on the education piece. So I really love to be with a group of people and be able to, whatever the content is, be able to break down a concept for them and to watch them learn and grow through that process and just be a guide through that process. I really love that piece. So I started really focusing on the art education piece. It allowed me to continue to work in my chosen field and content, but also transfer that on to others. So that's where I got involved with the Cornell Creative Arts Center and started to build my online classroom. So that's kind of where I am today. I'm actually back at New Paltz right now. For any of you who recognize these lovely blinds and windows behind me, I was given an opportunity to come back to the college for a short period of time, because of the bridges I built and relationships I built while I was here. Someone had reached out to me to tap me for a very specific experience that fits in with what I'm doing in terms of still teaching and creating my own art. So I'm back here for a short period of time, and then I'll be going back full time into my arts world. So.
Thank you. Something that is really comes up a lot with you is taking advantage of opportunities. And that I think is just so huge for anyone, but definitely in the arts, and just being
Yeah.
open and seeing things and kind of carving out opportunities,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's, I know on campus you were always taking photographs, and
Mm-hmm.
even your job with the alumni office, taking photos at events. And so that was a way that you inserted that skill, which now is part of what you do in
Mm-hmm.
your work. Did you want to share your website?
Sure. Yeah. So as you said, I can't leave that part out, but I'm also a photographer. So it's Shana Circe Arts and Photography. And photography really is a skill that can be applied in a lot of different ways. And I use that very commercially right now to pay the bills and buy all of the art supplies I want to buy. But yes, so I have two websites, but if you just go to shanacirce.com, you can get to everything else. But I also have shanacircephotography.com. And then you can find me on Instagram and Facebook. So under Shana Circe, and then you can find your way to Umbrella Arts Academy if you want to take a look at that. So my personal work is primarily on my Instagram page, and then Umbrella Arts Academy is a lot of my work that I teach and lessons that I teach to people. Um, so yeah, I think taking advantage of opportunities is really important, and especially in the arts world, I think I spent a lot of time in the last year talking to a lot of different artists and art educators that are in all different modalities of, you know, creation of their art, where they present their work, how they present their work, whether they're a digital artist, whether they're dabbling in NFTs, whether they're presenting in formal traditional gallery spaces. And I think for me, and maybe it's different for students coming in to school now as art students, but for me, I had a very narrow view of what being an artist meant or being an art educator meant. It was you are an art educator in a public classroom, and there are one or two of them per school, and like that's what you have to choose from. Or you're an artist who chooses a particular medium, and then you present that medium in a gallery and someone buys that medium. Like, so that was my very, very narrow scope of what it meant to be in the art world and to be an artist or an art educator. And that is simply not true. And that narrow scope is not even the tip of the iceberg. Like, it's the tippy tip of the iceberg. So I encourage all students, like, it's okay to want to be one of those two things, to be an artist who presents in galleries, or an art educator in a classroom. But there's so much more to the world of art and being a visual artist, that you can explore. So I highly encourage students to try to open that perception they might have to a much wider scope, and really look at opportunities in everything you do to be able to develop your skills as a visual artist.
Great. And I know, and you mentioned this, but you have built your network through your past jobs,
Mm-hmm.
and that is super helpful. Like, that's how I knew, like, that's how I follow you
Mm-hmm.
on Facebook, or see all your work. And then honestly, even in your portfolio, I can recognize some people I know from, and I know
Yeah.
someone who's commissioned you for a painting. So, I'm always just amazed at all the different ways you've branched out in such a short time. And like, you're super busy. Like, there's not
Yeah.
enough time to do everything, that you have contracts out there. And
Yes.
yeah, and I love what you said about, we have sometimes a really narrow focus of, or what does it mean to be an educator? And you can educate in so many ways, but the art ed and being in K through 12 is a structured kind of concept that we all know about.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many students that I meet with and alumni that they want to educate or teach in some way outside of K through 12, and then some that want K through 12. So
Mm-hmm.
definitely, yeah. So thank you for sharing that. Another
You're
thing I
welcome.
wanted to touch on is, and we've had this conversation too. There's so much business in having your own arts business and being
Mm-hmm.
the creator and the artist, but those skills that you've continue to hone but have gotten along the way have been not just helpful but super important.
Yes. So if I had to do, like, knowing what I know now about, so being an artist is really being an entrepreneur who creates art. Um, so you have to build a business around yourself, like you are the product, versus, building a business around some tchotchke you're going to sell. Like you and the things you create in your medium, or if you're an educator and you're selling your service of education, you are the product. So there's a lot that goes into that part, the business side of it, which I don't think either you don't get when you're in school, and maybe it's different now, or no one tells you, like, this is something you're gonna have to learn really quickly, like when you get out, or you should go on and take some business courses or go to an MBA program. But yes, so for me, being in another field and learning as much as I could about the business end of things, learning how to read a contract and write a contract, learning how to use Excel and like to keep myself organized in terms of budgeting and receipts, and learning basic concepts of brand identity and building a brand. Like these are all pieces of like the business part of it. But I was fortunate to be exposed to a lot of that in my prior experience, along with building a huge network, a huge network. So if I had to do what I'm doing now, like the day I walked out of college, it would take, I feel like it would take me 10 years to go as quickly as I've gone now. But I did a lot of the building a network, before I started, and then also learning the business parts. So I'm not drowning in business. Do I love the business parts? No. Do I aspire to someday like hire someone to do some of the business parts? Absolutely. I'm not there yet, but I'm competent enough to kind of limp along and like do those pieces where I feel like, it's not crushing me and taking me away from the art part so much that it's really difficult to manage.
When you said that Excel and the contract, if you look on, well, and for current students and even alumni, if you look on LinkedIn Learning, they have all these little
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
courses in each of them. So I think that's super helpful. And then it's also life experience. I mean, I've sold and bought a home, and there's all the contracts and do whatever your life is. Yeah, it's like a special skill, but
Buy
learning it
insurance.
along the way.
Insurance is important. I don't want it to be, but it is.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's huge. It's huge. Um,
But yeah, definitely I would encourage people to look at the resources you just mentioned, Dawn. Like there's so many resources out there. It can be overwhelming, but absolutely
mhm.
utilize Dawn and the Career Resource Center, because they've already filtered through a lot of those things and can just point you to like start here and learn these things, or like here's a great resource we've already vetted. You don't have to like wonder like is this the best way to go about this. So if you're a current student or a young student or a young alum, like go talk to them. They will help you.
Right. And then there is the Orange and Blue Network, which I'm guessing you are on.
Yes, I'm in there. You can connect with me any way you can find me. I'm happy to talk to students and alum about my journey and experience. I've connected with a few. I've been interviewed for some podcasts for other alum that are doing similar things. So, yeah, happy to talk.
Great. Um, yeah, I'm just wondering if there's anything else that how should students get involved and engaged on campus while they're a student? Any tips for that?
Um, Again, it's all about, I think, recognizing opportunities and being open to knowing that there are opportunities in everything you do. I don't care if you work in in food service, or you're a president of a club or an organization, or you are a resident assistant, whatever. However you want to get involved, find something that interests you, that you know keeps you busy, whatever it is, and then look at what that job or organization is, and find the opportunities, find the connections to the things that you love to do. So for me, and I'm working, so I have a high school student. My child is a high school student. He is getting ready to start looking at colleges, and he's very nervous about, he doesn't know what he wants to do with his life. Like he doesn't know the X job that he wants to be. And a lot of his friends are like, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a lawyer, I'm going to be a teacher, I'm going to be, the top 20 kind of ingrained in us from childhood. Like, what do I want to be when I grow up? And he doesn't want to be any of those things. And he's really nervous. And I keep telling him, like, you don't know what you don't know yet. Like there are so many things, and you need to look at every opportunity. And when do you find that you, in your day, when do you find that you are kind of alive with energy and excitement to be a person on this planet? And then like look at what you're doing, whatever that is, you know, and figure out, am I interacting with people? Am I by myself, like reading deeply in a novel? And like whatever that is, like start to translate that into, you know, types of work that would facilitate that type of experience. And that could be many different things. So, you know, not looking at, I want to be a police officer, but like, I want to work with people. I want to, and that goes, and that's the same, you know, for me, it was education. I love working with other people to help them learn and grow. And that can manifest in so many different ways. I also happen to love contributing to the visual world around me. So marrying those two things has brought me like tremendous joy. But it took me a long time to really build something and get there. You don't have to know the day you leave either.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I also know that when you're, involved, and you don't have to always know what the outcome of, being part of a club or going to a talk or is going to be, because you don't know what those organic connections or relationships are going to be. You just go to it, because sometimes
Mm-hmm.
people be like, well, I don't think there's anyone there at that job fair that will help me. And it's kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
you don't know, because you don't know who is in other
Mm-hmm.
people's network. And if you,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to like analyze it before you do something or get involved. It's an opportunity.
Just
So,
show up. Just show up and be curious and ask questions. If you just do those three things, like you will never stop moving forward.
yeah, that's great advice. So I want to thank you again, Shana, for being our
Thank
guest today.
you.
And yeah, so thank you everyone for joining Arts Chat, and we will have another episode coming up soon. Thank you,
Excellent.
Shana.
Thank you so
Bye.
much, Dawn. I really enjoyed it. Take care.